welcome to another episode of the Silver Track Extra, where we give you the tools, tips, and tricks to improve your guard management, retain more customers, and gain the upper hand against your competitors. Here are your hosts, Chris Anderson and Johnny Page.
What's up, Silver Track Nation? Johnny Page and Chris Anderson here on episode number 93, which will be the last episode of 2015. Chris, we started this way back in March. Of course, we've been doing our day-to-day outside of the podcast for a lot longer than that, but pretty crazy to be closing out 2015 with an episode I think is going to do particularly well and be super informative for our listeners on how to win approval from the HOA board members.
Yeah, that's a topic, huh?
Right? Yeah, I think the most interesting situations I was ever in as a whole in the security industry was in sitting in on board meetings where I just had to wait my turn to give the presentation, but you get like crazy Aunt Sue coming in that's real pissed off that someone cut down her lavender flowers and, or wants to plant rose bushes, but it's outside the CC&Rs. Like, you get some pretty crazy, I guess, meetings with the HOA board members, and a couple of ways to win their approval when they can be, oftentimes they're the hardest ones to sell. There's always seems to be one or two that are going to dig their heels in. So,
think about it, John. It's not a boardroom; it's a war room. It's just like you said, right?
Yeah.
The only people usually show up to those board. Think about it. Let me ask you this: the majority of people that show up to those meetings is usually what, 10 or 15%? Right?
Oh, yeah.
So it's not usually typically a large group of people, and the people that do show want to fight or argue.
Yeah,
right?
They're the ones that have a bone to pick, right?
Yeah, and depending on the community and how old the community is, you have a big turnover of board members, because some of the board members, when they first started, that got on, were probably pretty sharp business people that wanted to maintain the community, figured, well, if I jump on, I can help maintain my own neighborhood, right? And they get discouraged because the other homeowners just want to fight and argue, right?
Yeah.
So they leave, and then what happens? There's a turn that happens.
Yeah.
And so sometimes you can get some really pretty bad board members, and it just becomes a really, really tough meeting, not only for the board, but even during the executive sessions, they can become problematic.
So. One thing to think about, the way that an HOA will differ than any other contract that you would go after is that it can be one of the most political contracts or buying processes that you'll participate in as a security company, right? The more board members there are, you're dealing with a lot of personalities, and so you could be at a loss just because the people, the board members on the board, or the ones who are in favor of you, have a bone to pick with the ones with other board members, and now those board members are not going to vote to approve your contract just because it would be siding with their rival on the board. You know what I mean? There's just going to be some.
Good point. That's a good point. That's so true.
So just being aware of that, we're going to give you a couple tools today to make sure that you give it your best shot. So put your best foot forward. Maybe some tactical ways that you can position your proposal, or even when you're in the HOA, really making sure that you're keeping that contract long term. So let's waste no time getting into it, Chris. I think the main thing, if you're going to walk away with one thing here as a result of this episode, it would be that the treasure is in the CC&Rs, or the community code and regulations. Chris, these can sometimes be a massive document of rules and regulations that the community has agreed to live by. So why don't you give us a little bit of a background? What are the CC&Rs, and why is it so important to the board members?
Okay, CC&Rs, like you said, the community code regulations that the management company that was hired or contracted by the community or the board members, right, to help oversee, right, controlling vendors, enforcing those rules. So in other words, if you live at an association, that it really keeps people from painting their doors green or red or pink, right, or not taking their trash cans in when they should be, right, or leaving the basketball in the cul-de-sac, right, over the weekend. So it's really to control the community. So the advantages of that, the manager who actually walks those properties weekly. That's what her goal is. That's what she has to do. So she goes out and does a community walk, inspects all the home, and then she writes those infractions up, presents it to the boards, and then there's usually fines associated with it. So that's the start of a CC&R.
Yeah, the goal is to create a quality living environment for all of the residents. It's things like we're going to control speeding in the property. We want our community to look a certain way and to maintain certain aesthetics. And so, or certain noise levels. We just are after a certain environment. So these are the regulations we put in place. So so these CC&Rs are what the board members are primarily dedicated to protecting, improving on. So their focus, the reason why we say the treasures in the CC&Rs is that if you can do your homework on what the most important regulations are, because this is a massive document. It's all of like the legal stuff that allows the association to operate, that requires the homeowners to pay the fees, all that stuff. So making sure that you know which ones actually are priority, which ones matter the most to the board members, and being able to highlight a plan to address those, or just even recognizing them in your proposal will really put you far ahead. So there's a couple of ways to do that. First off, do your homework. A lot of times the minutes for their meetings are posted online. And they're not password protected. You just have to know where to look. So search, if there's an association website, go online, see if you can find the meetings. I've even found the budget posted online. So you'll know how much is allocated for security, right? So you're not going to go in there with a proposal that's well over budget, right? So seeing the minutes and then seeing what was approved, all of those things, or complaints that are happening, understanding and getting a look into the community can be huge. And it's worth a look. It's going to take you 10, 15 minutes to do your homework.
Yeah, and it's going to also tell you, and it's also going to show you what their problems are, because they're going to show you what the line items of discussions for that meetings are, for whether it's parking, which is typically in Southern California a huge issue. What are the security issues? So their discussion line items are up and set. So it's a great thing to look at, and that'll give you a better idea what to look at in the CC&Rs. So when you go there, because board members have a tendency sometimes to make up their own rules and forget what's in the CC&Rs. So if you go there and you know and you're aware of their rules, it's kind of nice to be prepared, like you mentioned.
Yeah, and then do your best to speak with a resident in the area. Like, connect with your network, try to find someone who lives in the HOA, and they will absolutely have access to all the minutes, to the HOA budget, all of that. So if you can find someone internally who can get you that information, that's going to help. And it's also going to help, what are the memos that are coming across, the notices that are coming across through their mailbox of saying these are the most important things we're paying attention to. Again, that's going to help just give you a leg up. It's something your competitors probably not going to be doing unless they listen to the SilverTrack Extra. So
I used to drive in, John, because it'd be for sale signs, right? And I would I would drive in and just find somebody that's walking their dog or watering their lawn and say, hey, hello, how are you? Hey, I'm looking at some homes in here to possibly buy. Could you tell me a little bit about the community? And a lot of people will share with you. So it's another way of opening up. Yeah, just tell them you're there to buy a home, and they'll tell you all about it.
Great idea.
Yeah, look for that lady that's 6 years old, holding a martini, wearing a muumuu, with her dog in her hand. She'll tell you everything.
Oh, she'll know everything.
Well, SilverTrack Nation, let's take a break and hear from our sponsors over at Paperless Proposal. Paperless Proposal software was developed to make creating professional business proposals a quick, easy, and enjoyable experience. With Paperless Proposal, you and your team will never again have to go through the frustrating and time-consuming process of creating your business proposals using outdated and time-consuming tools like Microsoft Word or PowerPoint. With Paperless Proposal, you and your team will look forward to creating business proposals. Visit paperlessproposal.com/SilverTrack to take advantage of a special offer just for our listeners. Now, let's get back to our featured conversation.
So the second thing is that the nature of these board meetings is that most likely for any community that's got more than 200, 300, 400 homes in that range is probably going to have someone assigned to safety, security, parking, that kind of range. There's going to be a board member who heads that up. So they're responsible when they come together for their quarterly meetings, monthly meetings, however often they do it. They're responsible for summarizing their responsibilities or what's happening under their domain. So if you can provide and track some key performance indicators, things like how many problematic residents are there. So if we're tracking information like how many incidents we're reporting, or if we're able to do this and then be able to say that these 5 addresses account for 40% of the problems, right? So now we have data to support which our most problematic residents are. Or if you can track the total CC&R infractions, like how many noise disturbances, speeding violations, unauthorized vehicles. If you can track these type of things and arm that board member with the right information, you're making their job easier because they've got to come up with that summary either way. So if you can pull that together, you're really going to save them a lot of time, and that's going to be one board member who you're getting a vote for, right? Or a vote from.
Yeah, and everybody has to take in mind the manager. The management companies end up calling you, the manager that contract you to go out and do the work. She's going to have a problem. She's going to call you and say, listen, I need you to check the commercial vehicles that are parked on Walkerton Street. It's been a real problem. So you go, great. You just don't want to take that information, but you're going to have to give her some data, because when she goes to the executive session by herself and meets with the board, they're going to ask her, hey, what happened with Walkerton Street? Were you able to contact the security company and get those issues resolved? So if you can deliver that information to her ahead of time, right, where she has that, you are doing all kinds of great things. And one last thing too, what a lot of people don't realize is that, for example, when somebody's selling their home, or somebody put out a garage sale, or for a rent sign or anything like that, in the CC&Rs, the majority of them, they have to know about that. So if you're doing your courtesy patrols and you happen to see a for sale sign, and you can take a photograph and a date and time, and you can send that to your manager, you just saved her a walk. You really did. You just saved her a whole bunch of time. So it's stuff like that we're talking about when we talk about incorporating the CC&Rs and looking at what you can do to save them time is going to win you and keep that contract.
Yeah, which really leads us to the third thing you can do to win the approval from the HOA board members is displaying a track record of partnership. So it's one thing to be a vendor and just someone else who's got the lowest price and the best dressed officers to hide or to hire them. It's another thing to hire someone who's really going to be like a partner for the property. So if you can display that you've held other HOA accounts for a long time, if you can display, first off, just coming in the door and talking about the things that we've talked about here, using the type of language that we're talking about, understanding that the CC&Rs are important, you're going to show that you have credibility in this industry to serve the HOA accounts, and then displaying that you can communicate and work well with other vendors. So are you willing to report broken sprinklers to the maintenance team? Are you willing to do the lighting inspections on the schedules that they request? Are you willing to communicate with the management company and understand that they're going to have different needs and want different reports than the board is going to need and want? So just things like that, understanding the nuances of the HOA are really going to help you display that you will be a partner, or that you are a partner. So if you're not doing these things and you have HOA accounts, great way to shore things up. Imagine no company is going to come behind you and take this contract away if you're displaying all this, because it would be a lot to overcome.
Yep. And here's another thing, John, for everybody and listeners out there. Here's really important. If you're going to go out and get an HOA account, or you're brand new, take a look at the HOAs, do your homework, not only for that community, but look at the management companies there. Try to go in and find a well-known management company or a very, really big HOA. It could be your flagship, right? Because once you get a flagship property, a community that's well-known, very well taken care of, very well managed, and you go to other HOAs in the area and you tell them that you have that particular contract, that will open up a lot of doors for you. So do whatever you got to do to be your best. Get into some of these high HOA, level A properties, and then the other business will follow. But if you're doing a ghetto down the street,
It's going to be difficult.
It's going to be difficult. Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, guys, we've covered a lot in this episode. Hopefully you don't feel like it was drinking from a fire hydrant, but we've got a full article and all of these bullet points over at silvertracksoftware.com/93 for episode number 93. Feel free to visit that and then subscribe to our podcast. And by doing that, you'll receive an email every week with the podcast from that week and then a free resource. So we've got several resources over at silvertracksoftware.com/resources, from ebooks, kits, calculators, and free downloads, webinars, all of the above over there. So be sure to check that out, all centered around the subject of helping you improve your business and really reach your goals as a security company. So Chris, anything else to add?
That's it.
The last episode of 2015.
No, man, it was great, and we really enjoyed having everybody. And thanks for listening. We're looking for a great year, like you said, John, in 2016, and it's going to be fantastic.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it. Well, signing off for 2015, my name's Johnny Page.
And I'm Chris Anderson.
This is a Silver Track Extra, and we'll talk to you soon.